Well, good afternoon. It's now noon, so it's time for the Athens City Affordable Housing Commission. And as I've done with other meetings, we're going to start by giving an explanation of what the Affordable Housing Commission does and essentially what our mission is, so everyone understands that's out there and paying attention. The Athens City Affordable Housing Commission is a commission of city government established to review best practices, investigate community affordable housing models, and identify needs and opportunities within Athens city limits to advance decent, safe, sustainable, affordable housing for all city residents. The Commission is tasked with providing advice and guidance on measures and policies that influence access to and needs within the local housing market. It further goes on to say, for information about legal definition of affordable housing, please go to this link, and you can find that on the city website under affordable housing. So I want to emphasize that this is for housing issues for all citizens, and that does not just mean low income, though of course we would focus on that as well, but seniors, people with disabilities, workers, etc. We want to make sure that we have housing for workers, so businesses will come to the community and feel comfortable that they can hire quality workers for their businesses and nonprofits, etc. And we are an advisory group. We cannot force the city or the council to make decisions specifically, but we are here to advise them and to review and recommend. So with that being said, I'm going to go to the agenda. And right now we have, that was our quick introduction. We're going to establish quorum, and it looks like everyone is here except for Maria. And Maria did send an email to me and Molly indicating that she's not feeling well. It is that time of year where people don't feel good often. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the disposition of minutes, which I hope you have all read. I made some very, very minor changes, but I wanted to mention that after looking at the meeting from last week, I think we missed putting in the committee chairs into the minutes. So if you could please add that and make sure that we have those on there, that would be helpful, because we did talk about it, and I went back to check, and yes, we did. So if you could add that, we'll, with that being said, has anybody else found anything you're concerned about, saw differently?
I mean, my name's misspelled a couple times, so that's fairly minimal.
No, that's important.
Well, it's important to bring it up. We want to make sure that going
You're
forward.
Meg Han.
Yeah, it's a good way to remember it.
Exactly. See, now you've got it. Okay, no more mistakes on that one. All good. Okay, so anything else? Okay, great. So are we okay, Molly, if we just say adding the names of the chairs?
Yep, and fixing the spelling of Megan's name. And with those changes, we can have a motion.
Yes, so you want to make a motion?
I never think I should because I write them.
Okay, who else wants to make the motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Amy, go.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes.
With the
With
changes.
the changes.
Of the chairs and Megan's name spelled correctly.
Okay, do I have to say that?
No, I got it.
Okay.
You got it? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You need a second.
Oh, yeah.
second.
Oh, sorry. Okay,
I'll second.
when you're ready.
And I.
Okay.
Okay, so we're all in favor now. Good. All right, we can move on. We want to try to do this in an hour as much as we possibly can. That's our goal. Get stuff done and make it an hour. Okay, the next item on the agenda is city updates. Megan, anything on the Planning Commission that you want to mention from, or your work that you do, anything that might be helpful and useful?
I'll just update the commission that the changes to Title 21 and Title 23, which we've been referring to as the bulk controls, were approved by council last week. And so they will become active 30 days after their approval. So just wanted to update the commission and the community on that.
Okay, do you want to just real briefly explain what
Sure.
that means?
So those changes, we're addressing some issues within our existing zoning code related to just coming more into compliance with existing regulations with the state. Those were related more to the Title 21 changes. But then Title 23, which is our zoning code, what we looked at revising the minimum lot sizes and minimum setbacks for both residential zones and the commercial and industrial zones in order to allow for smaller lots, particularly for housing, to address some affordable housing issues. Affordable housing is very complicated, and this is just one step that the city can take. And so we thought that it was an appropriate one, and we are happy that both the Planning Commission and Council approved those revisions and that the community supported them as well.
Yes, and I am, yes, if you weren't going to say that, I was, so thank you very much. I appreciate it, but I think it's best. You should take the credit for that. I just voted for it, and that's good, but not like you, all the work you put into it. It was a tremendous amount of work, and it's putting us in a best practices kind of position moving forward to make better decisions and provide for additional housing in our community and make it more walkable, which is
Yes.
another goal.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't really have anything else to add except I think many of you know that HAPCAP has purchased, with the help of a grant that was done with the Athens Community Foundation, to purchase the Sunset Motel. And with the Sunset Motel, they will be able to, with the $2 million in the grant, it's a pretty sizable chunk, but it needs a lot of work, we will be able to provide non-congregate emergency housing for those people most in need. So we're very pleased about that. It was a big undertaking and shows the tremendous amount of effort, but there's a lot more need. So part of that is, you know, if there's people living in the Sunset Motel now, how do we provide for them? Because they've been doing the month-to-month kind of arrangement because they can't find housing. We do have the extended stay motel out on East State Street, and perhaps some of them might go there. We're not sure. But in any case, it's one step. There's a number of other steps going forward to try to deal not only with the fact that we're going to put them somewhere, but how can we help them transition to more permanent housing and provide them with food and or help them get food and other resources, and what other organizations around the community can be helpful, for example, the churches. And we're going to be interviewing churches. We're starting to interview churches to see how they might be able to help. So there's a number of different fronts that we're working on to try to address that urgent and important need. Shay, do you want to talk about the Board of Zoning Appeals and recent decisions and some, should we want to do you want to talk about committee updates after that?
Yeah, my first BZA meeting was just this last week, but the case that we heard was dealing with a specific section of code that allows property owners in the city to apply for a non-owner occupied short-term rental permit in certain R1 zones in the city. And as far as I know, none of those have ever been approved. And I think a primary reason for that is because this section of code, it kind of conflicts with the housing goals in the city. If we are to grant a non-owner occupied short-term rental permit to any property, and it is indefinite without any additional conditions applied, it's applied to a deed and it transfers with ownership. And so this is taking housing stock off of the market that otherwise might be a long-term rental or for sale housing. And so I think this is a section of code that's problematic because there's not really any, I don't really see a path for, or any reasonable path to approval for any of these applications in a way that's not, detrimental to our housing stock. So whether that's something that can be addressed here, and at least as far as proposing solutions in the Affordable Housing Commission, or whether that's, elsewhere, it seems like that specific section of code needs some attention.
Yeah, so you and I talked a little bit about that, if you don't mind me interjecting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think it's perfectly reasonable for our new development committee, perhaps, to take on revising that section of the code, which could be pretty easily done. We're not talking about a giant amount of work here. But if you look at the code and make a few moderate adjustments that would, like, for example, and I'm going to give my personal opinion here, I'm okay with having a homeowner who wants to rent out a room in their house, but they're there, so it's owner occupied. If they want to have somebody in their garage, I'm okay with that. Or above their garage, probably not in their garage, but in any case, whatever. But I think that for the most part, to fulfill our goals, having somebody, having investors or people who want to purchase 1, 2, or 10 houses around the community and then making them into Airbnbs or whatever, I don't see that as advancing the goals that we have intended. So I'm hoping that the new development committee, and I think that's the right place to do it, would take on the task of making those minor revisions in the code and taking a look at and making recommendations. So any comments about that? Any thoughts about that? Megan, I'm going to turn to you to see
Yeah,
if there's a
no, like
problem.
where my brain goes, like using the example you were talking about, I was like, well, but what happens if I owned a house in the city and I wanted to rent it, do an Airbnb for emergency housing to somebody who, is escaping domestic violence? Like, I know that, like, I think we have to be careful in that, like, I get what you're saying. We don't want it for investors to, but I also think there is a time, like, that's a sticky.
So that would be legal as long as you're renting for at least 30 days at a time.
Okay.
So a short-term rental, I believe, is defined as anything less than 30 days.
Okay. Yeah, so but again, like if it's a week while they, find long-term housing or something like that, that wouldn't qualify. And I feel like, I want to be careful about making blanket, but it sounds like it's not getting approved anyway. So again, I think it makes sense to look at it.
Yeah, and this is, I think, one of the challenges that we face is creating policies, to teach policy, so I can say this somewhat affirmatively. Creating policy can be really complicated because you do have to think about all the possible downsides or repercussions or whatever. I think in that case, for example, if somebody needs emergency housing, you're probably not going to charge them rent, or you may not.
Yeah.
So in that case, it doesn't apply
It's
at all.
not an issue, yeah.
I mean, I have someone living in my house now who doesn't pay any rent. She's not a renter. We have a separate apartment for her, but she's not a renter. So it doesn't apply.
Yeah.
So, I
I
mean,
just think there's nuances. I'm not against it. I just am
Right.
saying, like, I think that's, like, my brain just goes through the, like.
Of course, and this is why we need people who can think of those kinds of things and talk it through and see what works best. So all your voices are important on this issue, and I want to make sure that because when we passed this, we didn't think about those kinds of things,
Yeah.
really. I thought, oh, well, I use Airbnbs when I travel. Wouldn't that be nice? Sure, it's a little extra income for people. But then things come up that you go, oh, that wasn't really what I was hoping for.
Right.
So that's why you make amendments after you try something. You go, well, that was okay, but there's
Needs to
downsides.
tweaked, yeah.
So that's why we need your brains and experience and creative minds to come up with cool stuff that will make it work even better so we can be a model city in this regard.
Perfect.
What do you think?
I think it sounds great.
You okay with that? All right, so can I ask if you could work on that this next month, perhaps, as a,
New development committee?
yeah. Yeah, I don't think it would take that much time. And, I think especially with Megan's expertise and some of with the rest of you,
I think we will need to dive into the code
yes.
in a very detailed manner, so I do
Exactly.
think it will take longer than we expect it to, because I feel like there may be conflicts between what our current rental permit requirements are and maybe
Right.
even what Ohio Revised Code says as it relates to what a housing unit is and minimum length of stay someone can live in a housing unit, so.
And there are legal reasons to discuss it with Lisa. So this is
Right.
why Megan's here. Thank you very much.
And I want to chat with David Riggs as well, code director, to
Sure.
just make sure that
Absolutely.
whatever our ideas are will work with what the code currently is,
Good.
how
Well,
it's structured.
I will look forward to your wonderful new ideas on that, and then we can, but I see this as something that really fits within our purview, is to recommend ordinance changes when they don't make sense. Again, the city doesn't have to do it, but I think that if it makes a lot of sense, then they just might, and I think they will, actually. No guarantees, of course, but just saying. Okay, anything else you want to bring up, Shay, about Board of Zoning Appeals, or that's kind of where you're,
That's really the only update I have.
okay. Well, you've been there once, that was good, so, okay. Okay, any other city and housing-related news? I didn't mention that I have not heard anything about the Ridges. I'm assuming at this point, no news is good news, not bad news, so I will continue to reach out and find out if there's any updates on that. I have also not heard from any of the developers who have approached me in the past about possible development in the area, so no news about that either. Okay, nominating committee, do you want to take it?
Sure.
Go.
Well, we met about 2 weeks ago and did come up with a slate of nominations for the Affordable Housing Commission. I believe those are, and we've contacted everybody and everybody's confirmed they're comfortable with that. So we would like to, do you want me to say who those
Yes.
are? Okay, great.
Go ahead.
So we'd like to propose that we would nominate Solveig to continue to be the chair.
Thank you for pronouncing my name correctly.
Oh, you're welcome. We would like to propose to nominate Polly as vice chair and Molly to continue as secretary.
Thank you, Molly. Yes. Why over here?
Yeah, we're,
This is what happens when you do a good job, Molly.
Yeah.
Oh, I've heard that.
Thank you.
yeah.
Exactly. It's wonderful.
We should probably do a motion accepting that slate of nominees
Well, we're
after
not
we.
necessarily supposed to do that this time, but this is, you can
So-
mull it over.
Okay.
Okay, you can all mull it over for a
Mulling it
month.
over, got it.
Yeah.
And then we can address it next month. I think it's
Yeah.
probably best to do it that
I
way.
think so, on the bylaws.
For our
Yeah.
It was,
bylaws,
there was some like timeline questions. We actually had to call you during our meeting
Yeah,
to
yeah.
talk about what that means and if. we-
Right. I think, we can wait on this, but I think it's
Yep.
good.
So
and
I
So
can
you
say,
can all
per the
mull-
bylaws, we'll formally
do this
wait to
at the
adopt.
appropriate time
Yeah.
Yeah.
per the bylaws.
Yeah, we got it done early.
Yeah. So that's
Got
good. Okay, new development committee. Anything else besides what we already talked about?
Yeah, so we did meet earlier this month on the 8th and talked about kind of what we would like to, or what we think we should focus on as a committee.
Great.
And so we discussed things like grant opportunities, looking at potential tax incentives, development partnerships, feasibility studies, working on changes to the zoning code, drafting letters of support that this commission may want to submit on behalf of applications either before council or planning commission, working with public engagement, especially as it's related to new development or zoning code, and just really focusing on engaging and getting new development specifically for Athens and related to senior and affordable housing needs. We've got minutes for the meeting, but they won't be adopted until our next meeting, which we have tentatively scheduled for early December, on December 10th. So
Okay. Well, that's a big agenda. I love it.
I think
Yeah.
next month we're going to focus on identifying potential properties or projects that we can kind of focus on as a committee and make sure that we're able to have tangible change and stay focused, I guess.
Oh, and that brings up, to change the subject a little bit, but you and I had talked about finding out those homes that have been abandoned. Any progress on that?
But I think our most reliable data source is going to be the post office to see
Oh,
what
okay.
their current listing of vacant unit is. Now, that can change all the time, so that's more temporary vacancy, but I can reach out and see how their data's formatted.
Yeah, maybe if it's been no mail there for a year or something. I mean, people go on vacation, but they announce that, so,
Yeah.
Or if taxes are being paid.
Right, which that would be easy to find, yeah.
yeah. But there are
What
some
abandoned homes? Sorry.
there are some abandoned homes that they're still being, taxes are
Taxes
still
are
being,
being
but
paid on.
nobody's there.
Which
So-
abandoned homes are you referring to right now?
Just like Solveig had brought up, looking into currently long-term vacant housing units so that we could reach out to those owners to see whether or not they would be interested in either selling that property to someone who wants to actively maintain it as, a living unit, or other opportunities for it to actually become like an active housing unit. Do you feel like that's a their
Yeah,
summary slide.
I want to add that the realtors are real interested in getting.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
So there would be some incentive there to,
Yeah.
to help
Which I
them
guess they could
talk
also
through.
request from the post office if they were interested in that themselves.
Okay, well, we can talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so then, let's see, the neighborhood revitalization, well, I fell down on the job and I went on vacation for about 2 weeks and I did not meet. So I'm hoping that at the end of this meeting, if we could have just a brief, when can we get together meeting, or whatever, so I don't have to do a doodle poll necessarily since you are here. That would be great. And again, I apologize between the vacation and other things. I have all kinds of great excuses, but I will hope to talk with you, and I had some other things going on. So anyway, I will talk with you just briefly, hopefully if it's okay, after the meeting, and just see if we can come up with a time to meet. Is that okay? Group? Okay, sorry, again, apologize. All right, the Communication Education Committee, Polly and Amy, you don't really have anything, probably?
Nope.
Nope. Yep. Well, as we had agreed, this is going to be ad hoc. We don't really
Yep.
have anything to communicate or educate yet. But hopefully down the road, when we have some things like that, you two and perhaps others can meet and talk about it.
I was wondering if I could join that committee since I have access to the website and other communication through the
Of course.
government.
Of course.
Yeah.
You're welcome anywhere on this group.
You're
So,
everywhere.
You're everywhere. We love it. Okay. That's all of our committees. The only other thing is the executive committee, and since really at this point, it's only me and Molly. But I think we talked about that we need to have some kind of report to put together for city council by the end of the year. But there's not a lot to report, so I figure that, Molly can make sure I have the minutes and I can pull something together and just send an email to city council or whatever and leave it at that. I think that's enough. I don't think we need to make a big presentation or anything. Maybe next year, but not this year. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. So next we have for the good of the order, and that's one of the things I wanted to mention is I did send you an email about the email exchange I had with our law director, Lisa Eliason, on sunshine laws. And so she sent a little video for you to watch, and then when she gets back she's really busy right now, so when she gets back from her trip, she's going to do something a little bit more individualized, not just for our commission, but for all the commissions to make sure everybody's following the rules. Because it is important that for the size of when you have more than half, you have to meet publicly. So that means you have to make an announcement, and that's done through Scott Thompson, and he's our IT guy, and he will send out an announcement and he will post the agenda and that sort of thing. So it's not very time consuming, and frankly, probably nobody's going to show up, but it's still required. So that's the downside of having more than half on one committee. But the other thing that you have to remember is you can't email each other or call 2 or 3 people in a chain and say, hey, do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? Now, because we are not a regulatory body, we might have less restrictions and requirements because, it's not like the BZA where you can vote on something and then change people's lives. This is, hey, we're advisor and here's some things. So that might make a difference, and I haven't found that out yet because, like I said, Lisa said she's a little bit too busy, but do watch that and make sure that you understand it. And it's important to understand sunshine laws anyway, just the spirit of it. We want to make any public actions transparent, and so there's not some sneaking around kind of thing going on, as has happened sometimes, more recently with the redistricting effort. But, so, does everybody, you're cool with that? And, it is possible legal offense. If you violate it, you can get in big trouble. So I want to make sure that none of us get in any trouble. All right, that's actually all I have on the agenda for today. So I thought I would just open the floor for any comments. Michelle, you're here. Do you want to comment on anything said or add some issues or perspective?
Hi, everybody. On the BCA issue with the housing, that was a huge thing for very long, and it took a long time to get the ordinance put together to even come up with the statement, of what we were going to allow. I think you all probably know that there are Airbnbs allowed on the main entrances to the city. You do know that, do most of you. So Stimson Avenue, there's a lot of houses, Columbus Road potentially, Richland, that they do exist. So it was important, Shay said, R1.
Yeah.
Residential, just straight out,
In those zones, right?
owner occupied.
I think the code section, right, is an R1 zone on those corridors or abutting an R2, R3, or maybe a B zone.
Right.
Those are the areas where you can apply for that non-owner occupied.
Right.
And if you're owner occupied, I believe you can have short-term rental, right? Or you can, that's a permitted use as opposed to a conditional use that has to go through the BZA.
Right. So there are a lot of complicating nuances, I'll just say that, nuances to the,
Yeah.
to the ordinance. But I fully, having been involved in this, commission for so long, it does take away housing stock. There's no doubt about it, and that was one of the reluctance, 10 years ago, even pre-COVID, all of this kind of thing. They were seeing how neighborhoods were getting bought up by investors and developers, and that just really goes against what we're doing right now, right? So I'm sure you guys will dive deep into that issue, but may not take as long as you think. It's just that you're all new to it in terms of really talking about it, because there's a lot of things that are already set in place. So that was my main thing. And I'm, by the way, 1L in Michelle for just
Oh,
spelling.
you mean I've been spelling your name wrong too?
An
Oops.
important one.
Okay, well, we'll get it all down here.
Got it.
Let me just say that as you're doing this, any changes to ordinances, whatever committee you're on, running it by Michelle and other longtime folks. Mary's been here for a long time, so she really knows a lot about what's going on. So having some other folks look it over before you send it on for council to review, that would be good.
So, Vig, were you able to get out that email to them from the original, you remember the original review and report that was submitted? You remember when it went to a few people and it
Yes.
didn't go to everybody,
I
just
thought
so
it
they
ended
could
up
see
going-
the
I thought someone
historical.
had it.
Yeah, I think I forwarded it to
Yeah.
everyone
Did
and
you
it
get
went
it to
through.
everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. So just because a lot of the basics we're still talking about, but now digging deeper.
Yeah.
But I think that was just a good history. When I looked back at it, I was like, wow, this was a long time ago.
Yeah,
But
What year was that report? What year was
it's like
it?
2018. Am I saying that right?
yeah.
2018
so.
maybe,
And
or 17,
Okay.
or something like that, yeah.
Amy?
Boinovich School is doing a new study, a housing study,
Oh,
with the
well,
Athens Foundation. And we heard a little bit about, just like a tiny bit about it at our last Co-Create housing meeting.
Oh,
So-
see, I was on vacation,
Yeah.
so I missed that.
So, there'll be more, whenever that gets released, more will come out. It talks about like housing stock versus how many people need housing. It talks about
I'll have to go back and
prices
look at
and
that.
affordability.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and look at.
I don't think they shared
connect.
it. I don't think you
Well,
can.
I mean, connect with whoever's
Yeah.
doing it to keep us informed.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I was hoping we could get a copy of that as well.
Oh, no question.
Yeah.
That's why I want to get in touch with
So,
whomever does
some
that.
updated data to go with the legacy data.
Good.
Legacy.
Yeah.
Yes, historic legacy, we like that. Okay, anything else that anyone wants to bring up? Concerns, issues, things you've heard, whatever? Okay, so if that's the case, how about if we adjourn early and you can plan on working on stuff? And I'm going to get together just real briefly with those people, and that would be Maria, who's not here, Zach, Polly, Kimberly, and Michelle for just a minute. properly spelled with one L, just for a minute so we can come up with a time to meet and discuss some priorities. And great job, committee members, except for me, because I messed up, but everybody else did a great job. Thank you so much. And everybody's got some things to do for next meeting. And I will compile some information and a little bit more about the sunshine laws and make sure that you get that in a timely manner. So, yes. Would you like
I'll
a,
move to adjourn.
did you say it loud enough?
I'll
Debbie?
move to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Okay. And everybody's cool with that?
Yep.
Okay, good. All right, so if you could, if you don't mind sitting with me over here, we can do a little circle or whatever you want to do. And